Secretary-Designee Mike Duvall for Homeland Security and Emergency Management. I just wanted to briefly describe the genesis of the Real ID Act of 2005, enacted by Congress. It was based on the 9/11 Commission, who studied all aspects of the terrorist attacks on September 11th. They found loopholes in our federal system and in state systems of identification. All but one of the hijackers, 18 combined, had 30 different state identifications. Many were driver identification cards. And what they found is many of them were fraudulent and some were duplicative. So what the Commission recommended to Congress, of which they used Real ID to enact, was tighter security requirements for boarding aircraft and access to federal buildings, courthouses, ports, etc. The intent was to reduce driver's license fraud and to tighten security across the nation and within states. This is still an issue today as different elements of our government and the state assess terrorist and criminal activity. We found that people still use these loopholes that intend to do our country and our state harm. Of course, not everyone, but people do. And it's the lack of these minimum standards across states that allow criminals and terrorists to exploit jurisdictions that have differing standards. Essentially, the act is to help states reduce fraud, enforce the law, and enhance national security, all things that have been discussed with House Bill 78. I would just say we have until May 11th, 2011. The Department of Homeland Security at that time, if states do not have in place policy for driver's license to conform with Real ID, our driver's license will not be accepted as a federal form of identification. Meaning, as stated earlier, we would likely have to use passports or some federally recognized identification versus a New Mexico driver's license for access to federal buildings and or aircraft or ports. Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, Representatives, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. Anyone else who wish to speak in favor of this?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is John Minesford. I'm the Deputy Secretary at Taxation and Revenue. My point, I guess, is simple, and that's that this is an issue with House Bill 78 that 86% of New Mexicans are in favor of, and that is that illegal aliens in the state should not hold a driver's license. This is an issue that is not sort of a comparison between Arizona and New Mexico. It's New Mexico compared to the other 49 states in this country. This is the general rule that we see in the United States. This is the general rule that is advocated by the silent majority in the state of New Mexico. And this is an issue that I believe that at very least deserves the consideration for the full House and hopefully the full Senate to be considered in this legal process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Madam Chair and Mr. Vice Chair, I'm Gordon Eden, the Cabinet Secretary Designee for the Department of Public Safety. Prior to my position with this administration, I was a United States Marshal for the District of New Mexico for more than 8 years. During that 8-year period, we saw an increase in foreign nationalists coming through our very porous south border. Those foreign nationalists were primarily being brought to the United States for illegal purposes. That includes all forms of human trafficking. And sadly, from some of the Asian countries, people who thought they were coming here to get an opportunity to be in the film industry, only to be turned into prostitution rings that were operating not only in New Mexico but in Texas. Sadly, again, because our driver's license laws are the way they are, it made it easy for people to obtain a New Mexico driver's license. I believe that we have to look at it from all areas and recognize that the criminal element will always go to the weakest point. That being said, 2 persons who were responsible for the bombing of a building in Kansas actually came to New Mexico obtained fraudulent driver's licenses using fraudulent documents, and were able to hide here in New Mexico for several years before being caught. They weren't from a foreign country. They were U.S. citizens. They were white supremacists who used the loophole that we have in our laws now to obtain an authentic, legal New Mexico driver's license.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. Anyone else wish to speak in favor? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman, Madam Chair, it's good to be back with you. As a former member of this committee many moons ago, I'm Keith Gardner, Chief of Staff of Governor Martinez. Also here as a citizen since I'm not being paid on Saturdays. In fact, I think we stopped being paid on Wednesday, I think. We did our 40 hours by Wednesday. It's interesting that we come back to this issue that's been revisited. This was the first piece of legislation that I carried, which is very similar to House Bill 78, back when I entered the legislature many years ago. And it continues to be an issue. And frankly, what troubles me the most about this is we start to have this discussion, we get caught up in some of the nuances to the edge of what about all this other stuff, and really this is a public safety issue. We pass laws in this building, we enforce laws outside of this building that don't allow a 1%, a 2%, a 5%, or a 10% slide through. We say, this is a law because this is the way it should be. This is a public safety issue. An individual who presents a document should be the individual that's on that document. And when public safety officers are charged with making sure who an individual is, or when a person's pulled over, just like we had an incident the other night, they should know at that time who that individual is and what they're doing here in our state. This is an imperative issue. It's becoming more and more important that something be done now. We've kicked this can down the road as a state, continue to make excuses for why we believe that it's okay to break laws. And it's time that New Mexico stops doing this. It is a public safety issue. I think you've heard more than adequate testimony, specifically to Representative Nunez's bill on House Bill 78, why it's time that New Mexico citizens demand, the citizens of this state are demanding that this body take action now. Not wait, not discuss it anymore, but take action now. And that's why you all were sent here, that's why we were sent here, to govern at this point and not kick this can down the road more. So I would ask you that you not do this as a no rec, but actually pass House Bill 78 with a do pass. Let it continue through the process so that the full body can have an opportunity to vote on the bill and on its merits. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chief of Staff. You're not only missed in the House, but you're going to be missed Friday the 3rd at the Santa Fe Gymnasium.
Mr. Vice Chair, we would like to officiate that game. We think it's only fair that the governor's office, Scott Darnell, who's our Director of Communications, is a licensed official in the state. So we think it's only fair that we officiate that game.
Give us each 7 fouls, we'll consider it.
As long as my good friend Secretary Eden can be there with his weapon to make sure you guys will attack.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chief of Staff, for your service. Anyone else wish to speak in favor? Yes, please.
Yes, my name is Vanessa Padilla. I'm the